Good morning, children. Let us begin with part 6 of our chapter Nationalism in India. This is our final and the concluding part of the chapter. The limits of civil disobedience movement. Dalit participation in the civil disobedience movement. In the previous part, children, that is part 5, what we understood was something about the civil disobedience movement, its program and its end. We also read something about women participation in the civil disobedience movement and the rich farmers participating in the civil disobedience movement. In this part, let us start with Dalit participation in the civil disobedience movement. Not all the social groups were moved by the abstract concept of Swaraj. That means people were still not clear with the concept of Swaraj or self-rule which Gandhi gave. One such group was the nation's untouchables, who from around the 1930s had begun to call themselves as Dalit or the oppressed ones. For long, the Congress had ignored the Dalits for fear of offending the Sanatanis. Who were the Sanatanis now? Sanatanis were the conservative high caste Hindus. So Congress was ignoring the interests of the Dalits because it did not want to offend the Sanatanis. It did not want to take back or their support to go back. That is, Sanatanis should always support whom? The Congress. That is what Congress wanted. That is why it ignored the interests of the Dalits. But Mahatma Gandhi, he declared that Swaraj would not come for 100 years if untouchability was not eliminated. This is what Gandhi spoke. And this is what he wanted. He wanted one thing to be eliminated or to be removed, and that was the concept of untouchability. He said that when untouchability will be removed, then only one thing can come to India, and that is self-rule or Swaraj. He called the untouchables as Harijan or the children of God. Organized satyagraha to secure them entry into temples, firstly. Secondly, access to public wealth should be given to them. And thirdly, access to tanks should be given to them. And fourthly, roads should be theirs. And schools also should be theirs. That is, it should be open for them. Who is them here? It is the untouchable community, which Gandhi called them as Harijans or the children of God. He himself cleaned toilets. Who is he here? He is Gandhi here. Gandhi himself cleaned toilets to dignify the work of the Bhangi or the sweepers. That is what the sweepers were called at that time. And persuaded upper caste to change their heart and give up the sin of untouchability. So now see, children, what is this concept of untouchability according to Gandhi? It is considered as sin according to Gandhi, Pap, Mahapap according to Gandhi. But many Dalit leaders were keen on a different political solution to the problems of the community. They began organizing themselves. That is, Dalit leaders started organizing themselves because they wanted a political solution to the problems of the community. They began organizing themselves and demanded reserved seats in educational institutions and a separate electorate that would choose Dalit members for legislative councils. These were the two demands of the Dalit community leaders or the Dalit leaders. Firstly, demanding reserved seats in educational institutions, and secondly, a separate electorate should be given to them which would choose Dalit members for legislative councils. These were the two demands of theirs. Political empowerment, they thought and they believed, would resolve the problems of their social disabilities. Again, a thing that was thought by the Dalit leaders because they thought that only if they are given empowerment in politics, that is, politically, if they are strong, then only their social disabilities, which had come till now, which had become part and parcel of their lives, that could be gone. Dalit participation in the civil disobedience movement was therefore limited, particularly in the Maharashtra and the Nagpur region, where their organization was quite strong. So, where did they participate in maximum amounts? It was in the regions of Maharashtra and Nagpur. Otherwise, their participation in the civil disobedience movement, it remained limited. Why? Because They wanted one thing to happen to them, and that was political empowerment. That is what they wanted. Now, the Pune Pact, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Gandhi equals to Pune Pact, right? Remember this. Then, year September 1932. That is, year is 1932, month is September. Pune Pact. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who organized the Dalits into the Depressed Classes Association in 1930, clashed with Mahatma Gandhi at the Second Roundtable Conference by demanding separate electorates for Dalits. That is, he wanted political empowerment for his community. That is why he demanded separate electorates for his community, that is, Dalit community. And Mahatma Gandhi did not like this idea of Ambedkar. That is why there were clashes between both of them. Where? At the Second Roundtable Conference. Now, one more point is here that is important, and that is B.R. Ambedkar organized the Dalits into the Depressed Classes Association, and it was in the year 1930. Now, after that is the second bullet. When the British government conceded Ambedkar's demand, Gandhiji began a fast unto death. That is, British government. They were the followers of one policy, and that was divide and rule. So they were getting again a chance now, and they did not want to lose it. That is why they said yes to Ambedkar's demand. They listened to Ambedkar's demand, and Gandhiji started a fast unto death. After hearing this, that British government has conceded to Ambedkar's demand. He believed that separate electorates for Dalits would slow down the process of the integration into society. Why Gandhiji started a fast unto death? Why was he opposing this concept of the Pune Pact, that is, of this thing, that is, the demands of separate electorates made by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar for Dalits? Why he wanted to not hear to this? Why he was going against this? It was, the reason was only one, and that is he believed in one thing, and that is, if this happens, then it would slow down the process of the integration of Dalits into the mainstream society. That is what Gandhiji thought, as he was already working for the untouchability concept. He wanted to remove it. Ambedkar ultimately accepted Gandhiji's position, and the result was the Pune Pact of September 1932. Ambedkar and Gandhiji equals to Pune Pact of September 1932. Now, what were the clauses of this Pune Pact of September 1932? Firstly, it gave the depressed classes, later to be known as the scheduled caste, reserved seats in provincial councils and central legislative councils. Firstly, and secondly, but they were to be voted in by the general electorate. These were some of the provisions of the Pune Pact. Depressed classes got what? Reserved seats at two places, provincial councils and central legislative councils. But one condition was there, and that is general electorate would be electing them. The Dalit movement, however, continued to be apprehensive of the Congress-led national movement. Why? Because the Dalits thought of one thing, and that is Congress is not there, not supporting them. It is all with them. That is why this apprehension continued in them. Now, Muslim political organizations and the civil disobedience movement. Some of the Muslim political organizations in India were also lukewarm in their response to the civil disobedience movement. That is, they did not show much likeness and liveliness towards the civil disobedience movement participation. After the decline of the non-cooperation and the Khilafat movement, a large section of Muslims felt alienated from the Congress. They felt different from the Congress. They felt one thing, that is, Congress is not bothered for their interest, right? From the mid 1920s, the Congress came to be more visibly associated with openly Hindu religious nationalist groups like the Hindu Mahasabha. Congress came to be associated more with the Hindu groups that were religious groups, and they were called as nationalists also, like the Hindu Mahasabha. The relations between the Hindus and Muslims worsened. Each community organized its religious processions with militant fervor, provoking Hindu-Muslim communal clashes, and riots also were seen in various cities. Riots are dange, fasad, right? and this is that is religious processions, that is जुलूस निकालने लगी धर्म के नाम पर, and in it militant fervor was also added, which also added to one thing, and that is communal clashes were seen now, riots were seen now between the Hindu community and the Muslim community, and this happened to be seen in various cities, children. Every riot deepened the distance between the two communities, Hindus and Muslims, both of them. A gap came between them with every riot. The Congress and the Muslim League. The Congress and the Muslim League made efforts to renegotiate an alliance, and in 1927 it appeared that such a unity could be forged. The important differences were over the question of representation in the future assemblies that were to be elected. That was the main point. The difference was over this, that is, how much representation will be there of each community in the future assemblies that were to be elected. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, one of the leaders of the Muslim League, was willing to give up the demand for separate electorates only and only on certain conditions. Firstly, if Muslims were assured reserved seats in the Central Assembly, firstly, and secondly, representation in proportion to their population in the Muslim dominated provinces like Bengal and Punjab. In these two provinces, which were dominated mainly by one community, and that was Muslim community. In these two particular states, what should happen? In these two particular provinces, what should happen? Their representation should be there in proportion to the population. Negotiations over the question of representation continued, but all the hope of resolving the issue at the All Parties Conference in 1928 disappeared when M.R. Jayakar of the Hindu Mahasabha strongly opposed efforts at compromise. That is, one All Parties Conference was held. 1928 was the year. M.R. Jayakar, one person from Hindu Mahasabha, one personality from Hindu Mahasabha, he strongly said no to one thing, and that is, we are not going to listen to whatever they are demanding. So no efforts will be done at compromise. Negotiations thus broke, right? When the civil disobedience movement started, there was thus an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust between the two communities, that is, Hindu and Muslim community. Alienated from the Congress, large sections of Muslims could not respond to the call for a united struggle. United struggle for what? United struggle for the civil disobedience movement. Why this could not happen? Because the Muslims were thinking themselves away or aloof from the Congress. That is why they could not respond jointly or collectively to the call for a united struggle. Many Muslim leaders and intellectuals expressed their concern about the status of Muslims as a minority within India. That is, they thought of Muslims to be a minority within India, and their concerns are being neglected by the Congress. That is what they thought. They feared that the culture and identity of minorities would be submerged under the domination of a Hindu majority. This was the feeling. That is why they were worried. Who were in majority? It were the Hindus who were in majority. Who were in minority? It were the Muslim identities. That is the Muslim community who were in minority. That is why they were fearing. Who were the ones who were fearing about this? That is, they were the Muslim leaders and intellectuals. That is why they expressed their concern about the status of Muslims as a minority within India and their interest to be protected. That is what they wanted. The sense of collective belonging. Nationalism spreads when people begin to believe that they are all part of the same nation, when they discover some unity that binds them together. But how did the nation become a reality in the minds of people? How did people belonging to different communities, regions, or language groups develop a sense of collective belonging? This sense of collective belonging came partly through the experience of united struggles, that is, what they were facing and what they had faced. But there were also a variety of cultural processes through which nationalism captured people's imagination. History and fiction, folklore and songs, popular prints and symbols all played a part in the making of nationalism. Bharat Mata, the identity of the nation, as you know, is most often symbolized in a figure or image. This helps create an image with which people can identify the nation, relate the nation. It was in the 20th century, with the growth of nationalism, that the identity of India came to be visually associated with the image of Bharat Mata. The image was first created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. In the 1870s, he wrote Vande Mataram as a hymn to the motherland. Later, it was included in his novel Anandamath and widely sung during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal. Moved by the Swadeshi movement, Abanindranath Tagore, he painted his famous image of Bharat Mata. So you have to remember Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Image was first created of Bharat Mata by him. And secondly, you have to remember the name Abanindranath Tagore, that is, he painted his famous image of Bharat Mata. And who inspired him? It was the Swadeshi movement which inspired Abanindranath Tagore to do this. In this painting, Bharat Mata is portrayed as an ascetic figure, a holy figure, a pure figure. She is calm here, composed here, divine here, and spiritual here. In subsequent years, the image of Bharat Mata acquired many different forms as it circulated in popular prints and was painted by different artists. Devotion to this mother figure came to be seen as evidence of one's nationalism. Ideas of nationalism also developed through a movement to revive Indian folklore. In late 19th century India, nationalists began recording folk tales which were sung by bards, and they toured villages to gather folk songs and legends. These tales they believed gave a true picture of traditional culture that had been corrupted and damaged by outside forces. It was essential to preserve this folk tradition in order to discover one's national identity and restore a sense of pride in one's past. In Bengal, Rabindranath Tagore himself began collecting ballads, nursery rhymes, and myths and led the movement for folk revival. That was the contribution in Bengal of Rabindranath Tagore. Madras, in Madras, Natesa Sastri. He published a massive four-volume collection of Tamil folk tales, and the name was The Folklore of Southern India. He believed that the folklore was national literature. It was the most trustworthy manifestation of people's real thoughts and characteristics. That is, by reading these folklores only. It was believed by Natesa Sastri of Madras that by reading the folklores only, one can know what people really thought, what were the characteristics of the people at that time. It is the most trustworthy he called them to be, right? That is what happened with Natesa Sastri in Madras. Tricolor flag. As the national movement developed, nationalist leaders became more and more aware of such icons and symbols in unifying people and inspiring in them a feeling of nationalism. During the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag, which was of red, green, and yellow shades, it was designed. It had eight lotuses representing the eight provinces of British India and a crescent moon representing Hindus and Muslims. By 1921, Gandhiji had designed the Swaraj flag. It was again a tricolor flag. It had red, green, and white color now. Earlier it was red, green, and yellow. Now it was red, green, and white. And had a spinning wheel in the center, representing the Gandhian ideal of self help, that is Charkha. Carrying the flag, holding it aloft during marches became a symbol of defiance. That is, we are Ajay. That is, nobody can win us. That is defiance. Quit India movement, Bharat Chodo Andolan, 1942. The failure of the Cripps mission and effects of World War II. World War II, that is 1939 to 1945. It created widespread discontentment in India. This led Gandhiji to launch a movement calling for complete withdrawal of the British from India. Complete withdrawal of the Britishers from India. This is what Gandhi wanted now. And for that, he launched one movement that was called as Bharat Chodo Andolan, or the Quit India movement. The Congress Working Committee, in its meeting in Wardha on 14th of July 1942, passed the historic Quit India Resolution, demanding the immediate transfer of power to Indians and to quit India. Two demands in Quit India Resolution. Firstly, immediate transfer of power to Indians should be given, and secondly, to quit India, that is to leave India. On 8th August 1942, remarkable day, in Bombay, the All India Congress Committee endorsed the resolution which called for a non-violent mass struggle on the widest possible scale throughout the country. What is important in this? The date, 8th August, year 1942, place, Bombay. Which committee? All India Congress Committee. And in that resolution, what happened? Firstly, non-violent mass struggle would be there. Secondly, people will participate in widest possible manner. And thirdly, it will be held throughout the country. It was on this occasion that Gandhiji delivered the famous do or die speech, Karo ya Maro speech. People observed hartals, and demonstrations and processions were accompanied by national songs and slogans. The movement was truly a mass movement which brought into its ambit thousands and thousands of ordinary people, namely students, workers, and peasants. It also saw the active participation of leaders, namely Jayaprakash Narayan, Aruna Asaf Ali, Ram Manohar Lohia, and many women such as Matangini Hajra in Bengal, Kanak Lata Barua in Assam, that is Assam, and Rama Devi in Odisha. The British responded with much force, yet it took more than a year to suppress the movement. That was all, children, for the chapter. And with this, I end my chapter, Nationalism in India. Thank you, children.